Donald Trump is facing more criticism from business leaders today. Mitt Romney, who ran for president on an arguably more successful business record than Donald Trump's, today said this about Donald Trump's failure to condemn white supremacists and Nazis. Quote, whether he intended to or not, what he communicated caused racists to rejoice, minorities to weep, and the vast heart of America to mourn. The president should address the American people, acknowledge that he was wrong, apologize, state forcefully and unequivocally that racists are 100% to blame for the murder and violence in Charlottesville. That comes as another Trump Council of Business Leaders is falling apart. At least two-thirds of Donald Trump's Digital Economy Advisory Board has resigned, according to Politico. Two other Trump advisory boards, as you know, dissolved this week. The business community has now abandoned Donald Trump, leaving him isolated and undermining his central campaign argument that his business relationships and success would make him an effective president.
I'm really rich.
I know the best people. I know the best managers. I know the best deal makers. I'm a world-class business guy. I have to get along with everybody. I get along with everybody. That's my job. I'm a businessman. I know how to do this.
If Donald Trump has lost business leaders, that raises the question, who does he have left on his side? Joining us now is John Fasman, the Washington correspondent for The Economist, who contributed to The Economist's latest cover package. This is Donald Trump talking into a bullhorn shaped like a Ku Klux Klansman's hat. Also joining us is Peter Wehner, a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. He worked in the last 3 Republican administrations and was a senior aide to President George W. Bush. Peter, let me start with you, because one thing that Republicans have enjoyed being able to do in the last few decades in the United States is, generally speaking, claim the support and partnership of the business community because they share interests in some deregulation or lower taxes. And that's exactly the same thing with Donald Trump. Business leaders wanted to achieve some of the goals that he said he could achieve, and now they've turned their backs on him.
Yeah, and they've turned their back on him, not so much because of changes in policy, but because it's dawned on them that this man is a moral offense, and they're right about that. It's an unbelievable moment. The business community is bailing on him, and the white nationalists and neo-Nazis are rallying to him. I give you the Times, as Thomas More said. And the Republican Party is in a catastrophic shape right now because it's its business center and core and its moral core is being eroded by Donald Trump, and really all that's going to be left is this sort of radioactive white nationalist, white supremacist element, and it's just going to get very, very ugly. And having Steve Bannon on the outside now declaring war, as he says, on the establishment is going to make things even more chaotic and disruptive. This White House is coming apart. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And the last thing I'll say about that is that the problem is not Steve Bannon, despite how loathsome he is. The problem with the Trump presidency always at its core has been Donald Trump. And if he doesn't go anywhere, this malignancy will continue.
Well, having Bannon out of the picture will either prove that to be true or false in the coming days. John, you guys at The Economist are unabashed capitalists. But there's, what Peter was getting at is that there's an inability now, regardless of whether you're a Democrat or a Republican in America, there's an inability at the moment for the president to get things done, get those things on his legislative agenda accomplished, because the president has no allies. He has been, as my colleague Stephanie Ruhle said, donkey kicking Republicans in Congress. He's fighting with, he's going to be fighting with the far right now with Bannon, and he has got no particular relationship with Democrats in Washington.
I think that's a problem. I think in Congress you have people who are chomping at the bit to get things done. You have Democrats who I think would be excited to build some real infrastructure. You have Republicans who really want to do tax reform. But he has, number one, alienated everybody, and number two, he's shown that he has no real understanding of the sort of patient lobbying work that you need to do to get things done. So the question of what happens is a good one. I mean, one possibility is that the presidency just gets sort of shrunk down to its historical size, and Republicans pass a corporate tax plan of their own and present it to him to sign as a fait accompli. Now, the question there is, how will his ego react to having that happen? And that's something I fear we know the answer to all too well.
So, Peter, this is an interesting point, because we've had sort of 8 years of presidency, 16 years really of presidency before Donald Trump, of presidents who have tried to gain more executive power and make the presidency bigger. Now it may be that the presidency, as John says, gets smaller. But here's what Grover Norquist, who I think prior to Steve Bannon was the most powerful unelected man in Washington. Here's what he said in 2011 about what Republicans need. Listen.
The leadership now for the modern conservative movement for the next 20 years will be coming out of the House and the Senate. So focus on electing the most conservative Republican who can win, and then pick a Republican with enough working digits to handle a pen to become President of the United States.
Peter, I mean, that was an interesting theory, right? Get conservatives, fiscal conservatives, that is, elected to the House and the Senate, and get a president who'll sign the bill. That isn't even what Republicans have at the moment, because they don't have the moral leadership. They don't have the thing that you count on the White House for typically when you're trying to get tough bills through, and tax bills are tough bills.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Grover's theory was interesting. It was also wrong. This is exactly what the Republican leadership, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, thought could happen. They understood on some level that Donald Trump was an extremely inept an ignorant man, but they thought that they could push through an agenda and that they would get him to sign it, and all would be right with the world. They were wrong about that, because they were wrong in the sense that they underestimated the disruptive effect and just how psychologically and emotionally unhinged Donald Trump is, and the radiating effects of that on his agenda and on everything else. And the other thing that they underestimated is that this is hard stuff, legislation and governing. These are big bills that the House and the Senate were trying to pass, and you need an engaged and alert president to get them through in the best of times. And not only was Donald Trump not there to help them, he was actively hurting them. It was to the point that if you talk to Republicans on the Hill, they wanted him out of the meetings because he would set back their agenda. So look, the Republican Party legislatively is at sea. They've passed virtually nothing at all. But that is the least of their problems right now, because it's not a legislative failure for the Republican Party. It's a moral failure. It's an ethical failure, and it's going to get worse. And the Republican Party better realize that and stand up to Donald Trump on those grounds.
John, to your point about a smaller executive, a bigger legislative branch, is it obvious to you who in these days that we're in right now is going to lead that effort? And perhaps for the rest of this presidency, as we have a less relevant, less consequential president, because that's what he's doing to himself, that we end up with a more relevant, more consequential Congress?
It's not obvious yet. Someone really needs to step forward, and what we've seen so far is the initial bits of courage coming from the business community, and that's really not a surprise. If you run a business, there's no electoral college for business. You have to sort of be if you are a consumer-facing company, you have to take account of what people want. And so I think the question is, who are we going to see in Congress follow the business community's lead first? And I think that's not quite yet clear.
Gentlemen, good to talk to you. Thank you for being with us on this summer Friday night. John Fasman is Washington correspondent for The Economist. Peter Wehner is a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. He was a senior aide to President George W. Bush.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.